Everyone, today we are going to cover a little bit of a biology, anatomy, and physiology review. This is great if you are taking A&P in high school or college, and you may be taking A&P if you are a psych student, if you're a biology student, if you are pre-med, if you are pre-PT, if you're nursing. There's so many people who have to take this class, and this is one of those things that you just need to know. It's something that's expected. By the time you're done with A&P, you'll understand, but sometimes it can be a little confusing. So I'm going to break it down for you and trace the blood flow for you through the heart, through the body, and then back to the heart. So you can tell that I am much of an artist. This is your heart. You've got the right atrium and the right ventricle, and the left atrium and the left ventricle. The blue is deoxygenated blood, and the red is oxygenated blood. So that's your little key as we go through this whole thing. Remember, we are talking about anatomical right and left. So when we say the right atrium and the right ventricle, we're saying the patient's right. Right? So it's the opposite of what you're looking at. It's the patient's right and the patient's left. That's anatomical right and left. Okay, I know this looks confusing, but I promise it's not. With this, we're just going to define where the blood is going. So you need to remember the blood is always going clockwise, okay, no matter what. The blood is going clockwise when you look at the patient. If you're talking anatomically, then you're going counterclockwise, okay? So however you want to remember it, but know that as you look at the patient's body, as you look at this angle from where we are looking right now, the blood will always, always, always be moving in a clockwise direction. So if we're starting out in the right atrium, the blood is going to go through a valve, which is called the tricuspid valve, into the right ventricle. It's called tricuspid because it has three flaps, tricusp, okay, if that helps you remember it all. So it goes from the right atrium through the tricuspid valve and into the right ventricle. From there, it goes through the pulmonic valve. Pulmonic sounds a lot like pulmonary, which is exactly where we're headed. So we're going to go through the pulmonary artery to the lungs. Now I want to talk about the pulmonary artery for just a second. The pulmonary artery is one of only two arteries in the body that carry deoxygenated blood. Typically, artery starts with an A, carries blood away from the heart, and therefore has oxygenated blood because it's carrying the oxygen to the tissue. However, in this case, the pulmonary artery is indeed carrying blood away from the heart, but it has not received oxygen yet from the lungs. Do you know the one other place, it's not always present, the one other place you might see deoxygenated blood in an artery? If you said the umbilical artery, you are correct. When you have a baby in the gestational sac in the placenta, in the mom's uterus, you have the umbilical artery, which actually carries deoxygenated blood away from the fetus and back to the mom. You're looking at that artery carrying away from the perspective of the baby. So the artery is carrying away, but it's carrying deoxygenated blood back to mom so that it can then collect more blood and more oxygen and bring it back through the umbilical vein. So that is the one other place where you'll see an artery carrying deoxygenated blood. So that helps you remember the pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood because it's going away from the heart, but it hasn't yet received the oxygen from the lungs. Okay, so we've reached the lungs, and now we leave the lungs with oxygen now, and we're now in the pulmonary vein. So again, it's carrying oxygenated blood, but it's a vein because we're carrying blood back to the heart. So we go from the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. From the left atrium, we go through the mitral valve into the left ventricle. The left ventricle then pumps through the aortic valve and into the aorta. So those valves leaving the ventricles are named for exactly where they are going. So pulmonary valve going to the pulmonary artery, aortic valve going to the aorta. We go through the aortic valve, we go into the aorta. That aorta has different parts. That is a topic for another video, but that aorta is truly what brings the blood to the rest of the body. We've got body down at the bottom there. Then from the body, we end up back in the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava and back to the right atrium. There are a lot of other arteries and veins and capillaries and oxygen exchange, and there is so much more information. But this is, again, just a very, very basic, bare bones description of how the blood gets from the heart to the body and back to the heart, the general direction it takes, and these are the main vessels that it takes to get there. So again, the aorta is the main artery that takes the blood, but it branches off a million times. And then we've got the vena cava, which again is the main vein that takes blood back, but it's again branches and has lots of other parts. Okay, so this slide then is literally the exact same thing we talked through, but I numbered it. So you can just take a few minutes, you can pause the video, look at this, and see the numbers as we go through so that you can really follow. You can feel free to print this out if it helps, if you take a screenshot or a snip of the video. But just make sure you're noting the numbers. And then also I did color code the whole thing. So you've got blue for deoxygenated, red for oxygenated, and the lungs and the body where the deoxygenated is turning to oxygenated, and then oxygenated is turning to deoxygenated. Those are in purple because red and blue makes purple. All right. This is the exact same thing once again, but this time I wrote it out differently. Everyone has different study methods, different study habits, and everyone's brain works a little bit differently. So I wanted to write it out differently for you so you could see it this way as well. Again, you're welcome to pause the video, look at this, spend time with it, screenshot, snip, whatever you want to do. But this, I essentially just copied the exact same thing, but took out the picture and I just numbered them out. So we start in the right atrium. We go through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, we go through the pulmonic valve to the pulmonary artery and then to the lungs. So this is where we switch from blue to purple. All right, so now with number 7, we switch to red because now we are oxygenated. We are all set. We have our oxygen and we're ready to take it to the body. So we have it in the pulmonary vein from the lungs. So lungs to pulmonary vein to left atrium. From the left atrium, we go through the mitral valve into the left ventricle, where we then go through the aortic valve and out into the aorta. Now we hit the body, we give the oxygen to the tissue, and now we have deoxygenated blood again. So we are going from red to purple, where it turns to blue. And now we're in the vena cava, which is the main vein where all the branches come back to, and we then return back to number 1. We are still blue at that point. Number 1 is back to the right atrium. And that, my friends, is the blood flow through the heart. I really hope this helped. If you have questions, let me know in the comments. If you want me to go into more detail about where that blood makes the oxygen transfer or any specific topics that you are struggling with in your class, please do let me know. I can cover it and help you. So all of that being said, this is where I say all of those typical things like please subscribe to my channel, The Hopeful RN, to get more helpful study tips. If you want the spark notes of this video, I will put these slides on my Instagram page at The Hopeful RN. Please do follow me there as well. It helps me out a whole lot to be able to keep this going. And again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. And that is all for now. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.